This is our third unit of chapter 3, determination income employment. Third unit is problem of excess and deficient demand. How we can overcome the problem and the measures to reduce the problem, the reasons for the problem, impacts on the economy of those problems. So these are the three things are taught in this chapter. Now, first is excess demand. Excess demand. Excess demand means more demand. That is, when countries' current aggregate demand becomes more than the aggregate demand required at full employment level or aggregate supply required at full employment. This is the excess demand. Okay, so excess demand means that excess demand when countries' present aggregate demand is more than the aggregate demand or aggregate supply required at full employment. Because at full employment we know, learned in the earlier unit, at full employment AD and AS both are equal. So if the country's present demand becomes more than that level, then there is excess demand in the economy. Okay, so diagrammatically we can show it like that way. Here measuring income means national income. Here we are measuring aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Okay, this is the aggregate demand curve. Okay, and this is the aggregate supply curve. This is the full employment level, full employment equilibrium level. Okay, after the full employment level, aggregate supply curve becomes vertical. Means what? After the full employment, production cannot be increased because employment cannot be increased. And that time aggregate supply becomes vertical because after full employment we cannot increase our aggregate supply. Okay, so this is our normal situation of the economy at full employment level. So this much is the country's full employment level of income and output. Okay, so at full employment aggregate supply becomes vertical after full employment level. Okay, this is the normal situation. Now in this situation, our countries at that level AD and AS both are equal. Okay, now in this situation, if the country's aggregate demand level further increases, this is the new aggregate demand curve. This is the earlier equilibrium point, this is another equilibrium point. That time what happened? There is excess demand. This much is the supply of the country, demand is this much. So there arises this much of excess demand in the economy. Okay, because here aggregate demand level rises beyond the full employment. So after full employment aggregate demand rises, this is nothing but excess demand of the country. Okay, and this E is called over-employment equilibrium. Over-employment equilibrium point. And this is full employment equilibrium point. Okay, so there arises excess demand, and this excess demand, what happens? It creates inflationary pressure on the economy, and so this gap, that is E dash, that vertical gap is also called inflationary gap. Why inflationary gap? Because this excess demand creates inflationary pressure on the economy. We are coming details in later. So excess demand or inflationary gap, that gap is called inflationary gap. So excess demand arises where present aggregate demand becomes more than the full employment level. This is the present aggregate demand, this is our full employment level of aggregate demand. So here creates a gap, this gap is called excess demand or inflationary gap. Okay, now its impacts on the economy. What happened when there is excess demand in the economy? Okay, now impacts on the economy. Number one, impact on employment. Okay, now this excess demand situation arises where? It arises after the full employment level. So after full employment, there is no scope of giving more employment because already all the unemployed resources or people are employed in the economy in full employment. So after full employment level, employment cannot be increased. So in excess demand situation, the level of employment cannot be increased. It will remain same, can't be increased. Okay. Now, if we cannot increase the employment, is it possible to increase the output? So our output level of the economy also cannot be increased, because already all the resources are exhausted in the used in the employment. So we cannot increase the employment, so our production also cannot be increased. So if we cannot increase the employment and output, we cannot increase the income of the economy also. Income also cannot be increased, because employment cannot be increased. Without employment, income never possible to increase. Now what happened? The ultimate pressure of the excess demand fall on the price level. Okay, general price level increases in the economy, because income employment cannot be increased. So excess demand impacts on the price level. Due to excess demand, general price level increases in the country, and so the price level of the economy increases, which create inflation in the economy. Okay, so this is our excess demand. Just reverse thing is deficient demand. Deficient demand means when countries' present aggregate demand becomes less than the full employment level of aggregate demand. Okay? When the country's present demand becomes less than the full employment level. Full employment level, at full employment level, whatever demand is required, if our present demand is less than that, then there arises deficient demand. Means whatever demand is required, this is not found in the economy, so there is deficient demand. Okay. Now, diagrammatically, how it can be explained? Same as earlier one. This is our normal aggregate demand curve, and this is our aggregate supply curve. After full employment, aggregate supply becomes vertical, and so this is the shape of the aggregate supply curve. This is our aggregate demand curve, and this is the full employment level of income of the country. Normal situation. Now, in this situation, if aggregate demand level decreases, suppose it reaches down, this is our new aggregate demand curve. Now what happened? Earlier this one was the equilibrium point, this is full employment, equilibrium, and here we are getting another equilibrium point. ADS curve intersect here, this one is called underemployment equilibrium. Equilibrium point. Okay. Now see, income, employment, output, all in the economy reduced. This is deficient demand. Due to fall in the aggregate demand from the equilibrium level, there arises a gap between these two, and this gap is called deficient demand. Okay, and that gap creates deflation in the economy, and so the gap is also called deflationary gap. Earlier was inflationary gap. Deflationary means what? Economy comes down. Normal situation is this one, but economy comes down. Here see, income, employment was this much at equilibrium level. Now due to this, income, employment, output, everything reduced in the economy. This is deficient demand or deflationary gap. So due to deficient demand, there arises deflationary gap, and due to excess demand, there arises inflationary gap. Now impacts on the economy. Here what happened? Here investment, income, employment, everything reduced. Due to fall in the investment, countries, employment of the whole country will reduce due to fall in investment. If employment of the country reduce, output of the country also will reduce. Okay, due to fall in investment, employment also will fall, output also will fall. If employment reduces, countries' income of the economy, whole economy will reduce. Because in multiplier we learned, due to fall in investment, output, income, everything reduced. So final pressure come on the price level. Here price level also reduce in the economy. Why for? Because due to lack of demand. Supply is more, demand is less. So due to lack of demand, countries' price level of the whole economy will less. So this is the impact of the deficient demand. Due to deficient demand, income, employment, output, price all reduces, but in excess demand it was reversed. In excess demand, employment, output, income cannot be increased. Only price increases. Here, just reverse thing we are getting. So this is excess demand and deficient demand. Now, how to overcome the problem of excess demand? Both excess and deficient demand is bad for the economy, bad impact. So how we can overcome the problem of excess and deficient demand from the economy? Now, to overcome this problem of excess and deficient demand, there are two measures. One is adopted by the government, measures adopted by the government, and some of the measures adopted by the central bank, that is Reserve Bank of India. In our country, central bank is RBI. So government policy, Reserve Bank policy. Government policies are called fiscal policy. The policy adopted by the government is called fiscal policy, and the policy adopted by the RBI, that is central bank, is called monetary policy. Okay. In fiscal policy, there are 3 instruments. In monetary policy, there are 7 and 8 instruments. So let us start with the fiscal policy, that is government policy. How government can overcome the problem of excess and deficient demand through its policies. So let us start with the fiscal policy. Policy adopted by the government of the country, that is fiscal policy. Now here 3 instruments are there. First one is taxation, means tax. Government imposes tax on the public of the country. Okay, and each and every person of the country directly or indirectly paying tax to the government. Okay, now suppose we are trying to solve our excess demand situation. Excess demand means when aggregate demand of the country is more than aggregate supply of the country. Means what? Aggregate demand is more. So our target is what? Our target is we have to reduce our aggregate demand up to our aggregate supply level. That only our excess demand problem will be solved. So we have to reduce our aggregate demand level from the economy. So somehow we have to reduce aggregate demand. So to reduce aggregate demand, if we can reduce money supply from the country, money supply from the economy, then only aggregate demand problem will be solved. If there is excess money supply, then there will be more aggregate demand. So our target is how to reduce excess money supply from the economy through using fiscal policy. Now, first one is taxation. Our target is to reduce aggregate demand in excess demand situation. So taxation means people used to pay tax to the government. This is tax. Now, when there is excess demand in the economy, means what? More money supply in the country, then government will do what? Government will increases the tax rate. The rate of tax will be increased by the government, or government also may impose new taxes. New taxes. So if government increase the existing tax rate, or if government impose new taxes, then what happen? People have to pay more tax to the government. So what happen? Their disposable income means after paying the tax, what income left with the person? Disposable income of the whole economy will fall. So when the disposable income of the economy will fall, our aggregate demand level also will fall, and economy will come back again at equilibrium level. So by this way, through increasing the tax, government can reduce the aggregate demand level. Now just reverse thing in deficient demand situation. When there is deficient demand means what? Our aggregate demand is less than our aggregate supply. That time what we have to do? We have to increase our aggregate demand to the level of aggregate supply. Just reverse thing we will do in deficient demand. What we will do? We will reduce the tax rate from the economy. And not only that, government may abolish some taxes, existing taxes. Abolish some existing taxes from the country. So what happened? People have to pay less tax and that disposable income will rise and the aggregate demand of the economy also will rise. So our problem of deficient demand is solved. So by taxation, government can reduce the problem of excess and deficient demand. Second instrument is government expenditure. Okay, government expenditure means the expenditure made by the government for the welfare of the country or some other development, non-development activities of the country. This is government expenditure. Now when government spend more money, people income increases. Ultimately, we people are getting income directly or indirectly from the government spending. So with the increase in the government spending, our income increases. So when there is already excess demand in the country, government will reduce its expenditure, and what happen? Less money will be supplied in the economy due to fall in the expenditure of the government. Less money supply will be in the economy, so people's income will fall, and then our aggregate demand level also will fall and economy reach an equilibrium. So when there is excess demand, government will reduce its expenditure, but in case of deficient demand, government will increase its expenditure. This is for excess demand. And when there is deficient demand, government will increase its expenditure on various productive or maybe unproductive activities, and that time economies money supply will increase, people income will increase due to rise in the employment, and aggregate demand level also will increase, because in deficient demand our target is to increase the aggregate demand. Third one is deficit financing, third instrument. Okay, deficit financing means printing of new currency notes, or government may finance the excess required money from outside or from inside the country. Okay, deficit financing means when there is budget deficit of the country, when government expenditure is more than income, then it is called deficit in budget. That time government will do what? To overcome the problem, government either print new currency notes, or government may borrow from the other countries or from RBI or from other sources. This is deficit financing, means financing the deficit of the budget. Now when there is already excess demand in the country, means what? In excess demand, already money supply is more in the country. That time government will avoid deficit financing. Government will not follow any deficit financing policy because already money supply is more. So if government avoid deficit financing, means what? Automatically country's money supply will fall. If money supply fall, aggregate demand level of the economy also will fall. But when there is deficient demand in the country, that time government will adopt the policy of deficit financing. Okay, why deficit financing? Because already shortage of fund in the country. That time government may borrow from other country, or government may print new currency note. By this what happen? Money supply of the whole economy will rise, people employment also will rise, income also will rise, and so country's aggregate demand level also will rise. So by this policy, deficit financing policy, government can correct the excess demand and deficient demand. So these are the three fiscal policy measures through which government can remove the problem of excess demand and deficient demand. That is policy adopted by the central bank, that is RBI of the country. This is monetary policy. Okay, here lot of instruments are there. First one is bank rate policy. Bank rate. Okay, bank rate means the lending rate of central bank to the commercial banks. Okay, the rate at which the central bank lend to the commercial bank, this is the bank rate. That is the interest rate of the commercial bank. Now in excess demand, what happened? The central bank, that is RBI, increases the bank rate. RBI increases the bank rate. So when RBI increases the bank rate means what? Interest rate of the economy rises, interest rate of the bank rises, interest rate of the commercial bank increases, means what? If people take more money from the bank, loan as loan, they have to pay more interest. So people will borrow less money from the bank, borrow will fall, because if they borrow more money, they have to pay more interest because bank rate increased. If people borrow less money from the bank, means what? Investment of the economy will fall. If investment decreases, income of the economy will fall, means what? The aggregate demand level of the economy also will fall. So to reduce the aggregate demand level, that is to remove the problem of excess demand, central bank increases the bank rate, so that borrowing becomes, that is borrow becomes costlier. If people borrow money from the bank, they have to pay more interest. So people will invest more money in the economy because they will borrow less, income of the economy will fall, aggregate demand level also will fall. Okay, this is the bank rate. Just reverse thing happen with the deficient demand situation. Second instrument is cash reserve ratio. CRR. Okay, cash reserve ratio is what? Every commercial bank has to maintain a certain amount of reserve with the central bank. This is the cash reserve ratio, CRR. Every commercial bank, it is mandatory. Whatever cash reserve they have to keep certain amount with the central bank. This is called CRR. Now to correct the excess demand situation, central bank do what? Central bank increases the cash reserve ratio of commercial bank. So by this what happened? Commercial bank has to keep more money as reserve with central bank. Commercial bank has to keep more money with the central bank, means what? Their loan giving capacity loan giving power reduces, because they are keeping more money in the central bank, so they have less money in their hand to give loan to the market. So they cannot give more loan to the bank, to the market. So what happened? Money supply of the economy reduce. If money supply reduce, what happened? Aggregate demand of the economy also reduce, because in excess demand our target is to reduce aggregate demand. So CRR increased, commercial bank has to keep more money with the central bank, their loan giving capacity reduces, money supply reduces, aggregate demand also reduces. Reverse thing happen in case of deficient demand. That time central bank reduces the CRR, means commercial bank has to keep less money with them and their loan giving capacity increases, aggregate demand also increases. Third one is statutory liquidity ratio. SLR. Statutory liquidity ratio. This is almost same thing of CRR. CRR is what? Central bank deposit money with the central bank. Sorry, commercial bank deposit money with the central bank. In SLR, commercial bank deposit money with themselves according to the direction of the central bank, RBI. Okay, here commercial bank deposit money with the central bank, here commercial bank deposit money with themselves according to the direction of central bank. If the central bank order them to keep certain amount with themselves, they will do it. Here also same thing. When there is excess demand, central bank order them to increase their SLR. Means what? Earlier they have keep more money as CRR, now they are keeping extra money as SLR to themselves. This money is frees up with themselves, and without permission of the central bank they cannot use it. So SLR increased. SLR increased means their loan credit creation capacity also reduced. They cannot give more money because they are certain amount of money with reserved as CRR, certain as SLR. Sorry, and less money supply in the economy. Means what? Means aggregate demand of the economy will fall. So this is the SLR. CRR, SLR, same thing. CRR, commercial bank keep money with the central bank. Here commercial bank keep money with themselves. Fourth one, open market operation. Open market operation means every commercial bank is related with that open market operation. Here what happened? Here two processes there. One is sale, another is purchase. What sale and purchase? Commercial bank, central bank used to sell and purchase of bonds and securities from the open market through using the commercial banks. This is the open market operation. The process of sale and purchase of bonds and securities in the open market by the central bank through using commercial banks. This is open market operation. Now during excess demand, central bank do what? Central bank start selling the securities in the open market through commercial banks. Okay, selling securities means now commercial bank are purchasing securities from the central bank. Means what? Their cash is now blocked with the central bank, that is RBI, because the commercial bank is purchasing the securities from the central bank. Central bank is selling securities to the commercial bank and commercial bank is purchasing the securities. So their cash money is blocked with the RBI. Now they have only the certificates. By showing the securities they cannot give loan. So their credit creation capacity reduced. Okay, so they cannot give more money as loan to the market, so money supply of the economy also reduced and aggregate demand level also reduced. Just opposite thing in deficient demand. In deficient demand, central banks start purchasing the securities from the open market through commercial banks. Now what happened? The central bank are purchasing the securities from the commercial bank and commercial bank are now getting their cash back from RBI. From RBI they are getting their cash back and their money giving capacity will increase, loan giving capacity will increase and aggregate demand will rise. So this is the process of open market operation. During excess demand, central bank starts selling the securities. Deficient demand, central bank start purchasing the securities. This is open market operation. Next one is marginal requirement. Marginal requirement, number 5. Marginal requirement means margin money. Okay, margin money means when you want to borrow from the bank, if we want to take loan from the bank, we have to keep something as mortgage to the bank. Okay, and against the mortgage, bank used to give us loan. Okay, this is called marginal requirement or margin money. Whatever deposit we are getting, we are keeping in the bank. Bank used to give something less amount. Suppose I used to deposit in the bank of gold of rupees 1 lakh. 1 lakh rupees of gold I am depositing in the bank, but bank will not give me loan of 1 lakh rupees. Bank will give me loan of suppose 90,000 rupees to me. Means what? 10,000 less means 10% less money I am getting from the bank. This 10% is called marginal requirement. Okay, the less money whatever I am not getting from the bank against my security, this is marginal requirement. So when there is excess demand in the country, bank used to increase the marginal requirement. Suppose generally it is 10%, now bank make it 40%. Means what? If I keep deposit loan of gold of 1 lakh rupees to the bank, I will get loan of only 60,000. Means what? My loan taking interest will fall. So people will not take more loan from the bank, because if they take more loan, they have to get more interest also, and they are getting less amount of as loan also against their securities. So loan taking interest will fall in the market, so money supply will fall and aggregate demand level also will fall. Reverse thing happen in case of deficient demand. Deficient demand means what? More money supply already less in the country, so bank is trying to increase the money supply. That time bank will do what? In deficient demand, bank will tell no, not 40%. Now if we keep loan of gold of 1 lakh rupees, you require only 2% marginal requirement. Means what? Out of gold of 1 lakh rupees, I will get loan of 98,000. Means what? My interest of taking loan will increase. So people will take more loan from the bank, means more money supply in the market. More money supply means more aggregate demand in the market. So our deficient demand problem will be solved. So when there is excess demand, marginal requirement will be increased. When there is deficient demand, marginal requirement will be reduced. Last one is moral cession. Moral cession is nothing but the guidelines, rules, regulation which the central bank used to impose on the commercial banks, and commercial bank has to follow the guidelines. This is moral cession. Now when there is excess demand, central bank will guide what? Central bank will instruct them not to give more loan in the market. They will guide them not give more loan in the market, so that aggregate demand can be reduced. When there is deficient demand, central bank will instruct them, so you give more loan in the market, so that aggregate demand level will increase. So moral cession is nothing but the rules, regulation, restrictions, guidelines which the central bank impose on the commercial banks. So during excess and deficient demand, according to requirement, they used to guide the commercial banks to increase the loan or to reduce the loan. Okay, so that's all about the whole chapter. Okay, bye.